The Book of Jasher, Yashar, Chapter 13. And Terah took his son Abram, and his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, the wife of his son Abram, and all the beings of his household, and went with them from Ur-Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. And when they came as far as the land of Haran, they remained there, for it was exceedingly good land for pasture, and of large enough for those who accompanied them. And the people of the land of Haran saw that Abram was good and upright with Elohim and men, and that Yahuwah his Elohim was with him. And some of the people of the land of Haran came and joined Abram, and he taught them the instruction of Yahuwah and his ways. And these men remained with Abram in his house, and they clung to him. And Abram remained in the land 3 years, and at the passing of 3 years Yahuwah appeared to Abram, and said to him, I am Yahuwah who brought you out from Ur-Kasdim, and delivered you from the hands of all your enemies. And now therefore, if you will listen to my voice, and keep my commandments, my Torah, and my laws, then will I cause your enemies to fall before you, and I will multiply your seed like the stars of the Shemayim. And I will send my barakah on all the works of your hands, and you shall lack nothing. Arise now, take your wife and all belonging to you, and go to the land of Canaan, and remain there, and I will be Elohim to you there, and I will barak you. And Abram rose and took his wife and all belonging to him, and he went to the land of Canaan as Yahuwah had told him. And Abram was 50 years old when he went from Haran. And Abram came to the land of Canaan, and dwelt in the midst of the city. And he pitched his tent there among the children of Canaan, inhabitants of the land. And Yahuwah appeared to Abram when he came to the land of Canaan, and said to him, This is the land which I gave to you, and to your seed after you forever. And I will make your seed like the stars of the Shemayim, and I will give to your seed all the lands which you see for an inheritance. And Abram built an altar in the place where Elohim had spoken to him, and there Abram called on the name of Yahuwah. At that time, at the end of 3 years of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, in that year Noah died, which was the 58th year of the life of Abram. And all the days that Noah lived were 950 years, and he died. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, he, his wife, and all belonging to him, and all those that accompanied him, together with those that joined him from the people of the land. But Nahor, Abram's brother, and Terah his father, and Lot son of Haran, and all belonging to them dwelt in Haran. In the 5th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and all the cities of the plain revolted from the power of Kedorlaomer, sovereign of Elam. For all the sovereigns of the cities of the plain had served Kedorlaomer for 12 years, and given him a yearly levy. But in those days, in the 13th year, they rebelled against him. And in the 10th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, there was fighting between Nimrod, sovereign of Shinar, and Kedorlaomer, sovereign of Elam. And Nimrod came to fight against Kedorlaomer, and to subdue him. For Kedorlaomer was at that time one of the princes of the armies of Nimrod. And when all the people at the tower were dispersed, and those that remained were also scattered over the face of the earth, Kedorlaomer went to the land of Elam, and reigned over it, and rebelled against his master. And in those days, when Nimrod saw that the cities of the plain had rebelled, he came with pride and wrath to fight against Kedorlaomer. And Nimrod assembled all his princes and subjects, about 700,000 men, and went against Kedorlaomer. And Kedorlaomer went out to meet with him 5,000 men, and they prepared for battle in the valley of Babel, which is between Elam and Shinar. And all those sovereigns fought there, and Nimrod and his people were smitten before the people of Kedorlaomer. And there fell from Nimrod's men about 600,000, and Mardon the sovereign's son fell among them. And Nimrod fled and returned in shame and disgrace to his land, and he was under subjection to Kedorlaomer for a long time. And Kedorlaomer returned to his land and sent princes of his army to the sovereigns that dwelt around him, to Arioch, sovereign of Elasar, and to Tidal, sovereign of Goyim, and made a covenant with them, and they were all obedient to his commands. And it came to be in the 15th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is the 70th year of the life of Abram, that Yahuwah appeared to Abram in that year. And he said to him, I am Yahuwah, who brought you out from Ur Kasdim, to give you this land for an inheritance. Now therefore walk before me, and be perfect, and keep my commands. For to you and to your seed I will give this land for an inheritance, from the river Mitzrayim to the great river Perith. And you shall come to your fathers in shalom and in good age, and the fourth generation shall return here in this land, and shall inherit it forever. And Abram built an altar, and he called on the name of Yahuwah, who appeared to him, and he offered burnt offerings on the altar to Yahuwah. At that time Abram returned and went to Haran to see his father and mother and his father's household. And Abram and his wife and all belonging to him returned to Haran, and Abram dwelt in Haran 5 years. And many of the people of Haran, about 72 men, followed Abram, and Abram taught them the instruction of Yahuwah and his ways, and he taught them to know Yahuwah. In those days Yahuwah appeared to Abram in Haran, and he said to him, See, I spoke to you these 20 years ago, saying, Go out from your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house, to the land which I have shown you to give it to you and to your children. For there in that land will I barak you, and make you a great nation, and make your name great, and in you shall the clans of the earth be Baruch. Now therefore arise, go out from this place, you, your wife, and all belonging to you, also everyone born in your house, and all the beings you have made in Haran, and bring them out with you from here, and rise to return to the land of Canaan. And Abram arose and took his wife Sarai, and all belonging to him, and all that were born to him in his house, and the beings which they had made in Haran, and they came out to go to the land of Canaan. And Abram went and returned to the land of Canaan, according to the word of Yahuwah, and Lot, son of his brother Haran, went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he went out from Haran to return to the land of Canaan. And he came to the land of Canaan according to the word of Yahuwah to Abram. And he pitched his tent, and he dwelt in the plain of Mamre. And with him was Lot, his brother's son, and all belonging to him. And Yahuwah again appeared to Abram and said, To your seed I will give this land. And he built an altar there to Yahuwah, who appeared to him, which is still in the plains of Mamre to this day. Chapter 14. In those days there was in the land of Shinar a wise man who had understanding in all wisdom, and good-looking, but he was poor and needy. His name was Rikayon, and he was hard-pressed to support himself. And he resolved to go to Mitzrayim, to Oswarus, son of Anamim, sovereign of Mitzrayim, to show the sovereign his wisdom, for maybe he might find favor in his sight, to raise him up and give him support. And Rikayon did so. And when Rikayon came to Mitzrayim, he asked the inhabitants of Mitzrayim concerning the sovereign, And the inhabitants of Mitzrayim told him the custom of the sovereign of Mitzrayim. For it was then the custom of the sovereign of Mitzrayim that he went from his royal palace and was seen abroad only one day in the year. And after that the sovereign would return to his palace to remain there. And on the day when the sovereign went forth, he passed judgment in the land, and everyone having a case came before the sovereign that day to obtain his request. And when Rikayon heard of the custom in Mitzrayim, and that he could not come into the presence of the sovereign, he grieved greatly and was very sorrowful. And in the evening Rikayon went out and found a house in ruins, formerly a bakehouse in Mitzrayim. And he stayed there all night in bitterness of being, and pinched with hunger, and sleep fled from his eyes. And Rikayon considered within himself what he should do in the town until the sovereign made his appearance, and how he might maintain himself there. And he rose in the morning and walked about, and met in his way those who sold vegetables and various kinds of seed, with which they supplied the inhabitants. And Rikayon wanted to do the same in order to get a livelihood in the city. And he was unacquainted with the custom of the people, and he was like a blind man among them. And he went and obtained vegetables to sell them for his support. And the rabble assembled about him, and ridiculed him, and took his vegetables from him, and left him nothing. And he rose up from there in bitterness of being, and went sighing to the bakehouse, in which he had remained all the night before, and he slept there the second night. And on that night again he reasoned within himself how he could save himself from starvation, and he devised a scheme how to act. And he rose up in the morning and acted cleverly, and went and hired 30 strong men of the rabble, carrying their weapons in their hands. And he led them to the top of the Mitzrite tomb, and he placed them there. And he commanded them, saying, Thus said the sovereign, Strengthen yourselves and be mighty men, and let no man be buried here until 200 pieces of silver be given, and then he may be buried. And those men did according to the order of Rikayon, to the people of Mitzrayim, the whole of that year. And in 8 months' time Rikayon and his men gathered great riches of silver and gold. And Rikayon took a great quantity of horses and other animals, and he hired more men, and he gave them horses, and they remained with him. And at the turn of the year, at the time the sovereign went forth into the town, all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim assembled together to speak to him concerning the work of Rikayon and his men. And the sovereign went forth on the appointed day, and all the Mitzrites came before him and cried to him, saying, May the sovereign live forever. What is this matter you do in the town to your servants, to not allow a dead body to be buried, until so much silver and gold be given? Was there ever the like of this done in the whole earth, from the days of former sovereigns, even from the days of Adam, to this day, that the dead should not be buried except for a fixed price? We know it to be the custom of sovereigns to take a yearly levy from the living, and you do not only do this, but from the dead also you exact a levy day by day. Now, O sovereign, we can no longer bear this. For this sake the whole city is ruined. And do you not know it? And when the sovereign heard all that they had spoken, he was very wroth, and his wrath burned within him at this matter, for he had not known nothing of it. And the sovereign said, Who and where is he that dares to do this wicked matter in my land without my command? Indeed, you will tell me. And they told him all the works of Rikayon and his men. And the sovereign's wrath was aroused, and he ordered Rikayon and his men to be brought before him. And Rikayon took about 1,000 children, sons and daughters, and clothed them in silk and embroidery, and he put them on horses and sent them to the sovereign by means of his men. And he also took a great quantity of silver and gold and precious stones, and a strong and good-looking horse, as a present for the sovereign, with which he came before the sovereign, and bowed down to the earth before him. And the sovereign, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim wondered at the work of Rikayon, and they saw his riches and the present that he had brought to the sovereign. And it greatly pleased the sovereign, and he wondered at it. And when Rikayon sat before him, the sovereign asked him concerning all his works. And Rikayon spoke all his words wisely before the sovereign, his servants, and all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim. And when the sovereign heard the words of Rikayon and his wisdom, Rikayon found favor in his sight, and he met with favor and kindness from all the servants of the sovereign, and from all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim, because of his wisdom and excellent speeches. And from that time they loved him exceedingly. And the sovereign answered and said to Rikayon, Your name shall no longer be called Rikayon, but your name shall be Pharaoh, since you exacted a levy from the dead. And he called his name Pharaoh. And the sovereign and his subjects loved Rikayon for his wisdom, and they consulted with all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim to make him prefect under the sovereign. And all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim and its wise men did so, and it was made a law in Mitzrayim. And they made Rikayon Pharaoh prefect under Assuerus sovereign of Mitzrayim. And Rikayon Pharaoh governed over Mitzrayim, daily administering right ruling to the whole city. But Assuerus the sovereign would judge the people of the land one day in the year, when he went out to make his appearance. And Rikayon Pharaoh cunningly usurped the reign of Mitzrayim, and he exacted a levy from all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim. And all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim greatly loved Rikayon Pharaoh, and they made a decree to call every sovereign that should reign over them and their seed in Mitzrayim, Pharaoh. Therefore all the sovereigns that reigned in Mitzrayim from that time onward were called Pharaoh to this day. Chapter 15. And in that year there was a severe scarcity of food throughout the land of Canaan, and the inhabitants of the land could not remain because of the scarcity of food, for it was very grievous. And Abram and all belonging to him rose and went down to Mitzrayim because of the scarcity of food. And when they were at the wadi of Mitzrayim, they remained there some time to rest from the fatigue of the journey. And Abram and Sarai were walking at the border of the wadi of Mitzrayim, and Abram saw his wife Sarai, that she was very good-looking. And Abram said to his wife Sarai, Since Elohim has created you with such a good-looking appearance, I am afraid of the Mizrites, lest they should slay me and take you away, for the fear of Elohim is not in these places. Indeed, then, you shall do this. Say you are my sister to all that may ask you, in order that it may be well with me, and that we may live and not be put to death. And Abram commanded the same to all those that came with him to Mitzrayim, because of the scarcity of food. Also his nephew Lot he commanded, saying, If the Mizrites ask you concerning Sarai, say, She is the sister of Abram. And yet with all these orders Abram did not put confidence in them. And he took Sarai, and placed her in a chest, and concealed it among their goods. For Abram was greatly concerned about Sarai, because of the wickedness of the Mizrites. And Abram and all belonging to him rose up from the wadi of Mitzrayim, and came to Mitzrayim. And they had scarcely entered the gates of the city, when the guards stood up to them, saying, Give tithe to the sovereign from what you have, and then you may come into the town. And Abram and those that were with him did so. And Abram with the people that were with him came to Mitzrayim, And when they came, they brought the chest in, which Sarah or Sarai was concealed, and the Mitzrite saw the chest. And the sovereign's servants approached Abram, saying, What have you here in this chest, which we have not seen? Now open the chest, and give type to the sovereign of all that it contains. And Abram said, This chest I will not open, but all you demand upon it I will give. And Pharaoh's officers answered Abram, saying, It is a chest of precious stones. Give us the tenth of it. Abram said, All that you desire I will give, but you must not open the chest. But the sovereign's officers pressed Abram, and they reached the chest and opened it with force. And they looked, and see, a good-looking woman was in the chest. And when the officers of the sovereign saw Sarai, they were struck with admiration at her good looks. And all the princes and servants of Pharaoh assembled to see Sarai, for she was very good-looking. And the sovereign's officers ran and told Pharaoh all that they had seen, and they praised Sarai to the sovereign. And Pharaoh ordered her to be brought, and the woman came before the sovereign. And Pharaoh saw Sarai, and she pleased him exceedingly, and he was struck with her good looks. And the sovereign rejoiced greatly for her sake, and bestowed presents on those who brought him the news concerning her. And the woman was then brought to Pharaoh's house, and Abram grieved for the sake of his wife, and he prayed to Yahuwah to deliver her from the hands of Pharaoh. And Sarai also prayed at that time, and said, O Yahuwah Elohim, you told my master Abram to go from his land, and from his father's house to the land of Canaan. And you promised to do well with him, if he would perform your commands. Now see, we have done that which you commanded us, and we left our land and our clans, and we went to a strange land, and to a people whom we have not known before. And we came to this land to avoid the scarcity of food, and this evil accident has befallen me. Now therefore, O Yahuwah Elohim, deliver us and save us from the hand of this oppressor, and do well with me for the sake of your favor. And Yahuwah listened to the voice of Sarai, and Yahuwah sent a messenger to deliver Sarai from the power of Pharaoh. And the sovereign came and sat before Sarai, and see, a messenger of Yahuwah was standing over them. And he appeared to Sarai and said to her, Do not fear, for Yahuwah has heard your prayer. And the sovereign approached Sarai and said to her, What is that man to you who brought you here? And she said, He is my brother. And the sovereign said, It is necessary for us to make him great, to exalt him, to do to him all the good which you shall command us. And at that time the sovereign sent to Abram silver and gold, and precious stones in great amount, together with cattle, male servants, and female servants. And the sovereign ordered Abram to be brought, and he sat in the court of the sovereign's house. And the sovereign greatly exalted Abram on that night. And the sovereign approached to speak to Sarai, and he reached out his hand to touch her, when the messenger smote him heavily, and he was afraid, and he refrained from reaching to her. And when the sovereign came near to Sarai, the messenger smote him to the ground, and did so to him the whole night, and the sovereign was afraid. And on that night the messenger smote all the servants of the sovereign, and his whole household severely, because of Sarai. And there was a great lamentation that night among the people of Pharaoh's house. And Pharaoh, seeing the evil that befell him, said, Indeed this matter has befallen me because of this woman. And he removed himself to some distance from her, and spoke pleasing words to her. And the sovereign said to Sarai, Please tell me concerning the man with whom you came here. And Sarai said, This man is my husband, and I said to you that he was my brother, for I was afraid, lest you should put him to death through wickedness. And the sovereign kept away from Sarai, and the plagues of the messenger of Yahuwah ceased from him and his household. And Pharaoh knew that he was smitten because of Sarai. And the sovereign was greatly astonished at this. And in the morning the sovereign called for Abram and said to him, What is this you have done to me? Why did you say, She is my sister, owing to which I took her to me for a wife? And therefore this heavy plague has come upon me and my household. Now therefore here is your wife. Take her and go from our land, lest we all die for her sake. And Pharaoh took more cattle, male servants and female servants, and silver and gold to give to Abram, and he returned Sarai his wife to him. And the sovereign took a maiden, whom he brought forth by his concubines, and he gave her to Sarai for a female servant. And the sovereign said to his daughter, It is better for you, my daughter, to be a female servant in this man's house, than to be mistress in my house, after we have seen the evil that befell us because of this woman. And Abram arose, and he and all belonging to him went away from Mizraim. And Pharaoh ordered some of his men to accompany him, and all that went with him. And Abram returned to the land of Canaan, to the place where he had made the altar, where he had first pitched his tent. And Lot son of Haran, Abram's brother, had a numerous stock of cattle, flocks, and herds, and tents, for Yahuwah was good to them because of Abram. And when Abram was dwelling in the land, the herdsmen of Lot quarreled with the herdsmen of Abram, for their property was too great for them to remain together in the land, and the land could not bear them because of their cattle. And when Abram's herdsmen went to feed their flock, they would not go into the fields of the people of the land, but the cattle of Lot's herdsmen did otherwise, for they were sent to feed in the fields of the people of the land. And the people of the land saw this occurrence daily, and they came to Abram and quarreled with him because of Lot's herdsmen. And Abram said to Lot, What is this you are doing to me, to make me despicable to the inhabitants of the land, that you ordered your herdsmen to feed your cattle in the fields of other people? Do you not know that I am a stranger in this land among the children of Canaan? And why would you do this to me? And Abram quarreled daily with Lot because of this, but Lot would not listen to Abram, and he continued to do the same. And the inhabitants of the land came and told Abram. And Abram said to Lot, How long will you be for a stumbling block to me with the inhabitants of the land? Now please, let there be no more quarreling between us, for we are kinsmen. But please separate from me. Go and choose a place where you may dwell with your cattle, and all belonging to you, but keep yourself at a distance from me, you and your household. And do not be afraid in going from me, for if anyone does injury to you, let me know, and I will avenge your cause from him. Only remove from me. And when Abram had spoken all these words to Lot, then Lot rose and lifted his eyes toward the plain of Yarden. And he saw that the whole of the place was well watered, and good for man as well as affording pasture for the cattle. And Lot went from Abram to that place, and he pitched his tent there, and he dwelt in Sodom, and they were separated from each other. And Abram dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and he pitched his tent there. And Abram remained in that place for many years.